Broadcasting live from beautiful Middle Tennessee. It's the Mr. Big Show. And here he is, Mr. Big.
Beyond the edge of reality lies a story of ultimate conquest, a story of war and friendship, a story of a love that can never be, and a hatred that always was. And now, the most anticipated epic adventure of the year will never come to a theater near you. Final Fantasy VII.
PlayStation.
People are strange creatures. We have many things that elicit nostalgia in us. For some people, it might be the smell of bread reminding you of better days of childhood. For others, it might be hearing one of your parents call you the nickname that only they have for you. But for me, and many other gamers that grew up in the same time period as me, it's hearing this noise. And I intrinsically smile just because I know how many good memories I've made after putting in a disc, closing the case, turning on the power, and hearing this sound. Final Fantasy VII. Everybody and their grandmother has heard of this game, even if they don't play video games. Is it the best Final Fantasy? No. Is it the best Final Fantasy on PlayStation? Also, no. But is it a game that you absolutely should play? Yes, without a doubt. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about why I do love it so much and why you should play it if you never have. Allow me to set the stage for this little trip down nostalgia lane. The year was 2001. George W. Bush had recently been elected President of the United States. The PlayStation 2 had just been released the preceding October and was awaiting many of the top tier titles it would eventually receive over its lifetime. I had just celebrated my 15th birthday, and my mother had just married my stepfather. Needing something to do over their honeymoon and my summer break, I packed my PlayStation up and went to my grandmother's house. She took me to Circuit City to pick out some games I could play over my time off from school. I saw all three of the numbered PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy games and quickly grabbed all of them, and I was astounded that she actually bought them all. Little did I know that that summer would change my life in ways I couldn't have possibly imagined. Since I had three numbered Final Fantasy titles, I figured I would start in order with 7. And as soon as I popped in Disc 1 and saw the opening cinematic, I was immediately hooked. The blend of science fiction and fantasy captivated me, and I loved it so much that as soon as I beat the final boss, I started a new save file and played through it again. 3 more times. This was my first true JRPG experience, and I was on the Final Fantasy VII bandwagon. Everything about this game resonated with me. The music, the tones of industrialization versus environmentalism to their extremes, all the different quirks and nuances the characters had, all of it hit me like a ton of bricks and opened my eyes to many new gaming and literature horizons. Now, with the slight preamble out of the way, let me tell you all about Final Fantasy VII. As the name says, this is the 7th numbered entry in the venerated Final Fantasy series. At the time, it was only the 4th Final Fantasy title that we had gotten in the US. Numbered titles, that is. It is also the first on the PlayStation and the first Final Fantasy to be in 3D. Final Fantasy VI used the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 capabilities to simulate a 3D world map, but it wasn't actually 3D. Being released in the 1990s, this was a big deal to gamers, and it changed the RPG genre from then on. Personally, I love sprite-based artwork and hand-drawn backgrounds, but seeing Cloud, Barret, and Tifa in 3D looked absolutely stunning at the time, and added a new layer of immersion to the battles. The battles are typical golden era JRPG battles, and for anybody that doesn't know what that means, I will gladly explain. From the beginnings of the JRPG genre with Dragon Quest moving into Final Fantasy and other titles, battles were strictly turn-based, where you selected what your team wanted to do, and they executed those actions in those orders, and then the enemy took their turn. With Final Fantasy IV, the battle system was changed into what was known as the active time battle system, where every character had a speed stat that in older titles it usually affected how many attacks they may have on a single turn, or what their critical rate would be, which is a damage multiplier for a basic attack. But in Final Fantasy IV, your speed stat determined how long it takes your active time battle gauge to fill up so your characters can take another turn. Which, no pun intended, was a game changer, because it simply meant you couldn't slog through battles just hitting accept to either attack or use the last attack that you had selected. You actually had to factor in, is my character going to be fast enough to beat this guy, or do I need to go ahead and strategize out what I need to do to heal up or buff up my characters to win this battle? And through Final Fantasy IX, the battle system stayed relatively the same. There were a few additions here and there, but the active time battle stayed until Final Fantasy IX. So moving on from that, 7 still had the active time battle system. You had a ATB gauge that filled up to let you know when your characters could take an attack. However, your characters and the enemy characters weren't simply on separate sides of the screen doing little animations to show that you attacked each other. Now, every character had a fully realized 3D polygonal model, down to changing the weapons that were equipped on your character whenever you did equip a new weapon on them. For example, when you finally found a new sword for Cloud, and he wasn't equipped with his basic Buster Sword anymore, in battle it showed the different weapon that he had equipped, as well as Barrett's gun, Tifa's gauntlets, even though it's pretty hard to see a lot of them, and so on and so forth for every character. The biggest difference moving into 3D with the battle system, though, was that it wasn't just everybody on separate sides of the screen. It was more of a 2.5D, not over the shoulder, but you were more up in the air looking over. So everything had a pseudo 3D feel to it. All the monsters had 3D models rendered for them as well, and the backgrounds were pre-rendered, so they looked amazingly beautiful. Even now, the PS1 pre-rendered backgrounds look amazing. But aside from visuals, the battle still played out pretty much like normal. You had your basic commands: attack, which did a physical attack. If your characters knew any magic, you could select magic to pick if they wanted to use offensive magic like fire or lightning, or restorative magic such as cure or Esuna that would take away a lot of status effects on your characters. You also had item, which is pretty self-explanatory, lets you use items in battle. But another way that Final Fantasy VII did change up the series as a whole and the battle system, there were no predetermined classes. Everything boiled down to the materia system, which was also the big new thing for Final Fantasy VII. The materia system simply allowed you to customize your characters in any real way you wanted to. If you had a materia that would use lightning magic, anybody that you equipped that materia to would be able to use that magic, no question asked, as long as they had that materia equipped. So anybody could be your thief, your white mage, your tank. It just depended on how effectively and how strategically you equipped the materia that you find in the game, and it is very plentiful. I don't think I'm alone in this thought process that while the materia system did make Final Fantasy VII very intuitive and very interesting to play compared to previous titles, the main problem was it boiled all the characters down to they're pretty much cookie cutters. The only real difference in the characters is their limit breaks, which I will go into shortly. The characters still have base stats such as HP, MP, magic attack, magic defense, And those do play a role in how they operate as characters. But to be honest, in Final Fantasy VII, the stats don't really matter as much as in other games, as one of the advantages and drawbacks of materia, when you equip it, it will raise and lower certain stats. So it doesn't really matter if Cloud has a slightly higher attack stat than Yuffie, because with the way you might end up equipping your materia, Yuffie could end up having a higher attack and defense stat and be just an overall better attacker than Cloud. The information we've just gone over is to give a very rudimentary view of Final Fantasy VII. I wanted to give everybody an idea of what it was before I really deep dive into it in case there's somebody that hasn't played it. Join me next time when I talk about all the little in and out nitty gritty things that make Final Fantasy VII the JRPG Classic that it is. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you. If you like what you've heard, please like and subscribe for more JRPG content. This is Mr. Big, and I will talk to you later.